This video shows the features available in careLINK for managing GDPR and permissions. These features help you gather and monitor permission to store and use data for all your contacts. They also allow each contact to choose exactly what they do and don't receive from you. In essence, you set up a set of questions, preferences or permissions for each contact to agree or disagree with, or to opt in or opt out of. For simplicity, we will refer to these as preferences. So you can set up preferences for contacts, e.g. permission to hold data, permission to send emails or letters. You can record each contact's preferences, and you can send mailings only to those contacts who have given permission or opted in. And finally, you can track people who have not yet responded and send them requests for information by email and or post. Recording contacts preferences. The new Preferences tab displays all the relevant preferences for each contact. For example, you can set a preference to be relevant to only clients or volunteers or club members. You can define these preferences to suit your organisation's procedures and data. In this example, you can see we have set up two preferences for storing data on a contact, general information and personal information, the latter being things like ethnicity and gender. And we have set up three mailing options, one for general client-related mailings, one for classes and events, and another for any fundraising requests we might want to send out. Now this is quite detailed, and you may want to simplify the preferences you offer. At a minimum, they probably should include permission to hold data and permission to send emails or letters. I will now move to the next record for Sarah Adams, and you will see that she has not yet responded to any of the questions. This is also shown in this header area on the top right hand corner. I can change any individual preferences easily. However, as you'll probably get all your questions answered from one contact in one go, assuming you have more than one question, it will be quicker to use the Update All feature at the bottom of the screen. Simply enter the answers that they gave and click the button to update all of the records above. You can then alter the odd one to reflect their individual preferences. Now you will often have a number of contacts to update in one go, and you can use these settings for them too. So I will jump to another contact, and now you can see how easy it is to update their details as well, and so on. Priority preferences. You will notice that there are two preferences which have asterisks next to them. The first two, which deal with the data that you hold on a contact. These are the ones that are covered by GDPR law and that you must have answers to. We call these priority preferences. The others are mailing preferences that contacts can opt in and out of, and so are in some sense less important and or optional. The red warning sign in the top right corner indicates that there is one or more priority preferences still to be answered. You'll see that once we complete these priority preferences, the warning sign turns yellow, indicating there's still some preferences, but there are no more priority preferences to be answered. Once all preferences have been completed, the warning sign disappears completely. Professionals. Some contacts, e.g. professionals such as social workers or nurses, may not need you to get their permission to keep their information on the database. Their information is in the public domain anyway. So you can simply tick the professional box and their permissions will be set to optional or not required, and they will not be flagged up as needing their permissions to be given. Although, as you can see, you can still opt them in or opt out of mailings. Note that any contact ticked as a professional will also not get flagged up if you have not had contact with them for a certain number of months. This is a new feature called anonymization of data, which we cover in a separate video. Also note that if someone is ticked as a professional but they are also on the database as a client or a volunteer, then their permissions revert to being required. Optional where question. Note that the new GDPR regulations say that you should gather the by whom and how information. So these must be filled in. The where field refers to where the question was asked. For example, on a joining leaflet, a direct question asked by phone or mail, or an event questionnaire. This is optional, and you can choose whether or not to display this in your version of careLINK from the settings feature. Managing missing preferences. As well as the warning sign on each contact's header screen, the main menu shows the number of active contacts with missing GDPR preferences. Now this only counts contacts with missing priority preferences, those marked with an asterisk. You can set preferences to be priority in the settings feature, which we'll look at in a moment. You can select these contacts from the contact screen and then using the advanced search feature. This also has the option for you to exclude any contacts that have been asked for their preferences in the last few weeks. And you can combine this selection with one or more record types, for example, just clients or just volunteers. Sending a mailing using contacts preferences. When you send a mailing to a set of contacts, perhaps all volunteers, you're automatically required to choose a preference or permission to ensure that you only send that mailing to people who have actively opted into it. So depending on how you set up your preference in the first place, you may require contacts to explicitly opt in to each individual mailing, or you may have a catch-all mailing permission, contacts opt in to receive any mailings from you, or when you're asked about keeping information on contacts, they also gave you permission to send mailings. See the separate video for how to do a mailing. Suggestion for collecting GDPR preferences or permissions. Send all contacts with missing preferences, and this may be all contacts, a mailing by email for those with email and then by post for those without email, explaining GDPR and asking for permission to store data and send mailings. And you can record this mailing as a GDPR history record, then enter the replies into the database as they come in. After a number of weeks, select all those who haven't replied and send a second request. Enter the replies into the database as they come in. And after a further number of weeks, select all who haven't replied and print a list and phone them individually. Let's quickly look at the settings for GDPR permissions. Lookup lists. How? This is how the contact provided their permission, by email, written, verbal, or other. By whom? This is limited by law quite strictly, so it can be themselves, their legal attorney, or in the case of a child, their guardian. Where? where the question was asked, for example on a joining leaflet, or a direct question by phone or email, or an event questionnaire. Question groups. This is optional and is mainly to allow you to group questions together if needed. In this example, we have set up two groups: data held and mailings. Questions. These are the actual contact's preferences or permissions. Define these to suit your organization's procedures and data, and at a minimum they should include permission to hold data and permission to send emails or letters. You can expand these so that people can opt in and out of specific mailings. In this example, we've set up 5 different types of mailings. And you can set different questions for different types of contacts. For example, just clients or just volunteers. In this example, the classes and events mailings only relate to clients, whereas the fundraising mailings we might want to send out to anyone, so we've ticked this to be all. Priority required. These are the questions that have an asterisk next to them and will show up in the main menu stats and also when you search for missing permissions. Default values. You can't change these for existing questions, but you can set a default value when you add a new question. So I'm going to add a new mailing for clients. I'll choose the group to be mailings and relevant only to clients and set the default value to yes. So you can see the new mailing is here in the list. So let's go and see the effect of that on an existing client. And you can see the new question has been inserted and the preference has been set to yes without us setting that. The other area that allows you to control how GDPR permissions work in your version of careLINK is how careLINK looks, and then the personal GDPR tab. Where the question was asked. Joining leaflet, direct question, event questionnaire. You can choose to hide this field and not record this information. Allow mailing override. When you send out a mailing by email or post to a set of contacts, you choose a permission that matches the mailing you're doing. careLINK will then exclude any contacts that have said no or not yet given that permission. This option allows you to override this stage if needed, but use this with caution. As always, please get in touch if you need any help setting up your GDPR permissions or managing them. Thanks for watching.